Every star sings. Every atom hums. Every thought ripples through the invisible web that connects all living things. Long before telescopes or particle colliders, ancient mystics whispered of a universal tone, a frequency that could heal the body, move mountains, and awaken the hidden power of the mind. Centuries later, scientists began to notice something impossible to ignore. Matter, energy, and consciousness were not separate forces. They were harmonics of the same vibration. From the silent hum of atoms to the subtle rhythm of brain waves, the universe appeared to be built not from particles, but from patterns, from resonance itself. The ancients called it the music of the spheres. Modern physics calls it resonance, but both point to the same truth, that everything, from galaxies to DNA, is held together by vibration. What if every miracle, every unexplained phenomenon, every flash of intuition or déjà vu was simply the result of tuning in to that hidden frequency? Over the last century, fragments of this forgotten science have resurfaced. Equations found in Tesla's notes, magnetic blueprints buried in classified archives, and strange experiments where sound and light appeared to bend the very laws of physics. Yet each time someone came close to decoding this universal language, their work vanished, labs destroyed, patents sealed, inventions labeled impossible. But maybe they weren't impossible. Maybe they were simply inconvenient. Because if frequency truly shapes reality, then whoever controls vibration controls everything. Tonight, we reveal the forgotten harmonics that connect matter, mind, and energy, the patterns that were hidden from history. These are the 10 hidden frequencies that could reshape reality.
In 1952, German physicist Winfried Otto Schumann made a discovery that changed how we understand the Earth itself. While studying atmospheric electricity, he noticed that the space between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere formed a kind of resonant cavity, a planetary drum that constantly vibrates with energy. The frequency of that vibration measured exactly 7.83 Hertz, a low, steady pulse beating endlessly across the globe. Invisible, inaudible, but always there. The heartbeat of the planet. At first, it seemed like a trivial curiosity, a scientific footnote. But decades later, researchers found something deeply unsettling. When scientists recorded the brainwaves of humans in deep meditation, their rhythms matched the same 7.83 Hertz signal, perfectly aligned. It was as if the human mind and the Earth were synchronized, locked into the same natural rhythm, breathing together in electromagnetic harmony. Some studies showed that when people were cut off from this field, isolated deep underground, surrounded by concrete and metal, their biological clocks began to collapse. Sleep cycles fractured, immune systems weakened, dreams turned chaotic. But when the Schumann frequency was reintroduced through artificial resonance, the symptoms disappeared, the body stabilized, the mind found balance again. What does that mean? That means that every human being is literally tuned to the song of the Earth. When that frequency rises or falls, we feel it in our emotions, our thoughts, our sleep, our pulse. During massive solar storms, scientists have recorded spikes in the Schumann resonance. At the same time, hospitals reported surges in anxiety, heart irregularities, and violent mood swings. Coincidence or proof that consciousness itself is entangled with the magnetic field of the planet? Some classified reports from the Cold War hinted at something far more disturbing. Projects in both the Soviet Union and the United States studied how electromagnetic frequencies could influence human behavior. Among the frequencies tested, one kept reappearing, 7.83 Hertz, the same rhythm that governs life itself. If the planet's natural frequency can calm the mind and synchronize the heart, what happens when that frequency is manipulated? What happens when human emotion becomes a dial someone can turn? We live surrounded by signals, Wi-Fi, satellites, radar, power lines, each one a vibration layered over the Earth's natural tone. If the Schumann pulse is the symphony of life, modern civilization has filled it with noise. Yet beneath all the interference, the Earth still hums its ancient note. It is the sound of equilibrium, the frequency of connection, the pulse of home. And maybe, just maybe, when humanity finally learns to listen again, we'll remember that we were never separate from the planet. We were always part of its song.
In the early 1930s, one man believed he could see what no other scientist had ever witnessed: life itself in motion. His name was Dr. Royal Raymond Rife, and his invention would change medicine forever if it hadn't been erased. Rife built a microscope unlike anything the world had ever seen. While conventional microscopes killed microorganisms under harsh light, Rife's creation used tuned wavelengths of color and resonance. Under his lens, viruses and bacteria danced, alive, glowing in their natural state. And then he noticed something extraordinary. Each organism emitted a frequency, a subtle electromagnetic signature, like a fingerprint of vibration. Rife wondered, if every microbe has its own frequency, could that frequency also be its weakness? He developed a device that generated precise oscillations of light and radio waves, tones that could shatter pathogens the same way a high-pitched note can shatter glass. He called it the beam ray machine. In 1934, at the University of Southern California, Rife was invited to test his discovery on 16 terminal cancer patients. He tuned his machine to the resonant frequency of cancer cells, and one by one, their malignant structures began to break apart. Within 70 days, all 16 were cured, completely. Physicians witnessed their recoveries. Medical reports were drafted. A press conference was scheduled. But before the results could reach the world, the story changed. The lead doctor on the trial, Dr. Milbank Johnson, died suddenly, the day before he was set to announce Rife's success. His files vanished. The lab was ransacked, and the newspapers never printed a single word. Within months, Rife's research was branded as pseudoscience. Colleagues who defended him lost their licenses. His equipment was seized, his prototypes destroyed. A few surviving devices, hidden by loyal engineers, were later traced and confiscated under public safety orders. The message was clear: this knowledge was not meant to survive. By the late 1940s, cancer treatment had become a billion-dollar industry. Hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and universities depended on its profits. A cure that cost almost nothing, that used frequency instead of chemicals, was not just revolutionary, it was a threat. Decades later, fragments of Rife's work resurfaced in underground laboratories and experimental clinics. Some claimed to replicate his results using bioresonance therapy. Others died mysteriously after revealing working prototypes. Still, his research refuses to vanish, because Rife proved something terrifyingly simple: that vibration can heal,
and that vibration can destroy. He showed that disease is not just a biological failure, it's a distortion of harmony, and that if you can restore the right frequency, you can restore life itself. The question is, did Rife uncover the true resonance of the human body, or the secret the world was never meant to hear?
During the Second World War, technology advanced at a pace humanity had never seen. Jet engines, rockets, radar, all emerged from secret laboratories buried deep beneath Europe. But among those projects, there was one branch of research that history quietly buried, a field that merged science, sound, and the human mind. Declassified documents hint at what they called diglocka, the bell, a metallic bell-shaped device powered by rotating electromagnetic fields, built to study gravity, resonance, and something far more dangerous, the manipulation of consciousness itself. Officially, the project never existed, but eyewitness accounts describe experiments where the air shimmered, time seemed to slow, and men standing near the device became disoriented, their perception fractured, as if reality itself had begun to vibrate. In parallel, other German research groups experimented with ultrasonic and infrasound frequencies, tones too low or too high for the human ear, yet powerful enough to influence emotion, induce panic, or even stop a heart. Some frequencies made soldiers euphoric and fearless. Others created confusion and despair. It was psychological warfare through vibration. The Nazi High Command believed that frequency was a weapon, one that could control not only machines, but people. They envisioned a future where entire populations could be subdued, not with bullets, but with sound. By 1944, documents suggest they were building aircraft prototypes that incorporated rotating magnetic systems designed to distort gravity itself, the early ancestors of what we would now call anti-gravity propulsion. Witnesses reported circular craft glowing with a pulsing hum, machines that rose silently into the sky before vanishing. When the war ended, this technology didn't vanish with it. Under Operation Paperclip, dozens of Nazi scientists were relocated to the United States, along with their notes and experimental blueprints. The research continued, hidden behind new names and deeper secrecy. Some of those same Nazi scientists later worked for NASA, for the U.S. Air Force, and for projects we still can't fully trace today. If vibration can alter gravity, and sound can influence the mind, what happens when the two are combined? The few who investigated this connection found their work classified under national security orders. Publicly, it was dismissed as myth, a wartime legend. But buried inside Cold War archives, the same frequencies appear again, in files labeled psychotronic resonance, gravitational harmonics, and electromagnetic consciousness modulation. Whatever the Nazis discovered, it was never truly lost, only absorbed, renamed, and hidden under layers of secrecy. And maybe that's because these experiments proved something terrifying, that reality itself can be bent, not through force, but through frequency.
For centuries, philosophers believed the mind was something separate, an invisible force that lived inside the brain. But modern science began to uncover a far stranger truth. The brain doesn't just think, it vibrates. Every neuron fires with rhythmic pulses of electricity, tiny oscillations that form complex wave patterns. When millions of neurons synchronize, they create standing waves inside the skull, a literal resonance chamber of thought. Scientists call them brain waves, but what they truly are is frequency, and frequency is vibration. At 8 to 12 Hertz, the human brain enters what's called the alpha state, a state of calm, creativity, and heightened awareness. At 4 to 7 Hertz, it sinks into theta, the frequency of dreams, intuition, and memory. And at the deepest levels, below 1 Hertz, the mind enters delta, the rhythm of death, rebirth, and silence. What shocked researchers wasn't the existence of these frequencies, but how they connected to the world outside. In 1973, neuroscientist Andrija Puharich tested the effects of external electromagnetic fields on the human brain. He discovered that when people were exposed to vibrations around 7.8 Hertz, the same as the Earth's natural resonance, their brain waves automatically synchronized, as if the mind recognized the planet's frequency and tuned itself to it. Subjects reported sensations of floating, time distortion, and in some cases, vivid telepathic communication. It was as if consciousness itself could be dialed in, like tuning an invisible radio. Around the same time, secret government projects began experimenting with brain entrainment. Declassified files from the CIA and KGB later revealed attempts to use electromagnetic frequencies to alter mood, induce sleep, even manipulate collective emotion. The goal was control, but the results hinted at something far greater. If a simple frequency can change perception, can it also open awareness? Can it bridge the space between thought and reality? Quantum biology now suggests that consciousness may not reside inside the brain at all, but in the electromagnetic field surrounding it. In other words, the mind might not be trapped in matter. It might be the vibration that animates matter itself. Some scientists describe the brain as a receiver, not a generator, a living antenna tuned to the cosmic broadcast of reality. If that's true, then thought is not confined to the body. It's a wave, one that can ripple through time, through space, through other minds. And maybe that's why prayer, intuition, and synchronicity work, not as miracles, but as harmonics, proof that every thought you have, every emotion, every dream, isn't isolated. It's part of the great frequency field of consciousness. The resonant brain isn't just the organ that perceives reality, it's the instrument that plays it. In 1952, German physicist Winfried Otto Schumann made a discovery that changed how we understand the Earth itself. While studying atmospheric electricity, he noticed that the space between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere formed a kind of resonant cavity, a planetary drum that constantly vibrates with energy. The frequency of that vibration measured exactly 7.83 Hertz, a low, steady pulse beating endlessly across the globe. Invisible, inaudible, but always there. The heartbeat of the planet. At first, it seemed like a trivial curiosity, a scientific footnote. But decades later, researchers found something deeply unsettling. When scientists recorded the brainwaves of humans in deep meditation, their rhythms matched the same 7.83 Hertz signal, perfectly aligned. It was as if the human mind and the Earth were synchronized, locked into the same natural rhythm, breathing together in electromagnetic harmony. Some studies showed that when people were cut off from this field, isolated deep underground, surrounded by concrete and metal, their biological clocks began to collapse. Sleep cycles fractured, immune systems weakened, dreams turned chaotic. But when the Schumann frequency was reintroduced through artificial resonance, the symptoms disappeared, the body stabilized, the mind found balance again. What does that mean? That means that every human being is literally tuned to the song of the Earth. When that frequency rises or falls, we feel it in our emotions, our thoughts, our sleep, our pulse. During massive solar storms, scientists have recorded spikes in the Schumann resonance. At the same time, hospitals reported surges in anxiety, heart irregularities, and violent mood swings. Coincidence or proof that consciousness itself is entangled with the magnetic field of the planet? Some classified reports from the Cold War hinted at something far more disturbing. Projects in both the Soviet Union and the United States studied how electromagnetic frequencies could influence human behavior. Among the frequencies tested, one kept reappearing, 7.83 Hertz, the same rhythm that governs life itself. If the planet's natural frequency can calm the mind and synchronize the heart, what happens when that frequency is manipulated? What happens when human emotion becomes a dial someone can turn? We live surrounded by signals, Wi-Fi, satellites, radar, power lines, each one a vibration layered over the Earth's natural tone. If the Schumann pulse is the symphony of life, modern civilization has filled it with noise. Yet beneath all the interference, the Earth still hums its ancient note. It is the sound of equilibrium, the frequency of connection, the pulse of home. And maybe, just maybe, when humanity finally learns to listen again, we'll remember that we were never separate from the planet. We were always part of its song.
For thousands of years, music was more than entertainment. It was a form of science, a precise language that could heal, awaken, and connect the human spirit to the divine. Ancient cultures believed that sound was sacred. They built temples not just for worship, but for resonance. Every wall, every column, every chamber was tuned like an instrument, designed to amplify the frequencies of the human voice and align it with the harmony of the earth. Among the most mysterious of these ancient sound systems were the solfeggio frequencies, 6 mathematical tones used in early Gregorian chants, said to bridge the gap between matter and spirit. Each tone carried a purpose: 396 Hertz to liberate guilt and fear, 417 Hertz to undo past trauma, 528 Hertz, known as the frequency of transformation, linked to miracles, DNA repair, and the regeneration of life itself. 639 Hertz, restored connection and love. 741 Hertz, awakened intuition. 852 Hertz, returned the soul to its original state of harmony. These weren't random notes. They were derived from the same mathematical ratios found in nature: the golden mean, planetary orbits, and the vibration of light. To those who sang them, the solfeggio tones weren't music. They were technology, a spiritual instrument that resonated directly with human DNA. But somewhere along the timeline, the music changed. By the 16th century, the original solfeggio tones disappeared from Western music. The Church replaced them with a new scale, one that no longer aligned with natural harmonics. And later, in the 20th century, the global standard for musical tuning shifted again to 440 Hertz, a frequency that subtly detunes the human nervous system. Coincidence or design? Musicians and researchers who've returned to the original solfeggio scales describe profound emotional responses, waves of euphoria, tears without reason, and sensations of energy flowing through the body as if ancient memories were being reawakened. When sound aligns with natural mathematics, something inside us remembers. Because the human body isn't just flesh and bone, It's an orchestra of oscillations. Our hearts beat in rhythm. Our cells pulse with light. Our DNA spirals in patterns of vibration. The solfeggio frequencies may be more than forgotten tones. They may be the keys to restoring balance between human consciousness and the cosmos. If modern music has trained our ears to forget harmony, then the solfeggio codes remind us of what we truly are. Resonant beings, instruments of creation, each vibrating to the song of the universe.
In the late 1970s, in a small apartment in Vancouver, Canada, a man accidentally discovered something that defied every known law of physics. His name was John Hutchison, an independent inventor obsessed with Nikola Tesla. Surrounded by coils, oscillators, magnets, and radio transmitters, Hutchison tried to recreate Tesla's electromagnetic experiments. But one night, while multiple machines were running at once, something impossible happened. Metal objects began to lift from his workbench, hovering silently in midair. Wood and steel fused together as if they were made of clay. Pieces of metal bent, melted, and sometimes vanished, without heat, without pressure, without explanation. Hutchison had stumbled upon a phenomenon later called the Hutchison effect, a chaotic zone of electromagnetic interference where the normal laws of matter seemed to break down. He filmed the events with handheld cameras. Balls of aluminum floated like soap bubbles. Wrenches drifted upward and spun slowly, surrounded by invisible waves. Even blocks of solid metal appeared to liquefy, then reform in new shapes. Scientists who witnessed his demonstrations were divided. Some called it fraud, others left speechless. But those who attempted to replicate his setup discovered the same unpredictable behavior. Objects losing weight, fields of static energy, and strange radio bursts that couldn't be explained by known physics. Soon, military officials from the United States and Canada took interest. They visited Hutchison's apartment, collected samples, and requested demonstrations under controlled conditions. He complied. And after that, everything changed. Within months, his equipment was seized. Authorities cited radiation hazards and safety violations, but the confiscated devices were never returned. His research notes disappeared into government archives. The effect was officially declared unverifiable. Yet, witnesses kept coming forward. They spoke of experiments that altered the density of matter, produced anti-gravity thrust, and emitted electromagnetic fields strong enough to distort time on nearby clocks. If true, Hutchison had discovered what scientists now call field interaction anomalies, the merging of electric, magnetic, and gravitational waves into one unified resonance, a force capable of neutralizing weight, bending metal, and perhaps even reshaping atomic structure itself. But such a discovery would challenge every principle of modern physics and every industry built upon it. For decades, fragments of his work have surfaced in classified reports. Rumors suggest that variations of the Hutchison effect were quietly tested in aerospace laboratories, integrated into propulsion research, and buried under names like electrogravitics and field-modulated inertia. Publicly, scientists laugh. Privately, they study. The Hutchison effect remains one of the most controversial demonstrations ever recorded. Half myth, half miracle. A glimpse into a universe where vibration and electromagnetism can rewrite the laws of reality. Perhaps Hutchison didn't break physics. Perhaps he simply heard the frequency that holds it together.
For centuries, philosophers searched for the source of consciousness. They dissected the brain, mapped its neurons, and measured its chemistry. But the spark itself remained untouchable. Modern science describes consciousness as an emergent property of the brain. But what if it's the other way around? What if the brain doesn't create consciousness, it receives it?
In the 1980s, researchers in quantum biology began to notice something extraordinary. Every thought, every emotion, every moment of awareness generates an electromagnetic field, a living frequency that radiates from the brain and heart in measurable patterns. These patterns aren't random. They form coherent waves that interact with other fields, even those around other living beings. Some call it intuition. Others call it telepathy. Science calls it field coherence. When two people fall deeply in love or share a moment of pure empathy, their heart and brain waves synchronize, literally vibrating in harmony. It's not poetry, it's physics. And here's where the mystery deepens. That same frequency range, between 7 and 15 hertz, matches the natural resonance of the Earth itself, the Schumann pulse, the heartbeat of the planet. In other words, human consciousness doesn't exist in isolation. It's entangled with the electromagnetic rhythm of the world we live in. When that field is disrupted by technology, by stress, by chaos, our thoughts fragment. We feel lost, disconnected, anxious. But when we return to nature, to silence, to stillness, our internal vibration realigns. We remember what we are. Ancient texts spoke of this. They called it the one breath, the divine current, the spiritus mundi. Tesla called it the energy of the universe. Today we call it the quantum field, a sea of frequency where thought and matter exchange energy, where observation itself shapes reality. In laboratory tests, intention has been shown to influence the behavior of photons, the smallest particles of light. Mind, it seems, can subtly bend matter. Consciousness can modify probability. And the universe responds not to what we think, but to the vibration behind the thought. That vibration is the frequency of consciousness, the silent hum of awareness that connects every being, every atom, every world. When you focus your mind, when you quiet the noise, you're not retreating into yourself. You're tuning back into that field. You're remembering the song that sings through all creation. We are transmitters. We are receivers. And consciousness is the frequency that bridges both.
For centuries, music and mathematics were one language, a sacred science through which the ancients mapped the cosmos itself. They knew that vibration was not merely a property of sound, but the architecture of reality. Hidden deep within that knowledge lies a concept whispered about by both physicists and mystics alike: the forbidden harmonics, frequencies so precise, so resonant, that they could reorganize matter, heal the body, and even alter consciousness itself. Evidence of these harmonics appears like echoes throughout history. In the ruins of Egypt, where temple walls hum at perfect resonant ratios. In the stone chambers of Malta, tuned to amplify the human voice until it vibrates the bones. In Tibetan monasteries, where monks chant in polyphonic tones that seem to bend air itself. But in the modern age, these frequencies vanished. Our tuning systems changed, our architecture went silent, and our sciences learned to measure, but not to listen. The few who rediscovered them met resistance. Nikola Tesla spoke of non-Hertzian waves that could transmit energy through the Earth itself. Wilhelm Reich discovered orgone fields, the life frequency of the atmosphere. John Hutchinson accidentally stumbled upon electromagnetic combinations that levitated steel. Each time, the research was seized, classified, or destroyed. Why? Because the forbidden harmonics expose an uncomfortable truth: that energy, matter, and consciousness are not separate.
They are variations of the same song, different notes played on the instrument of the universe. When those notes are aligned, when frequency, geometry, and intention converge, reality becomes malleable. Cells heal faster. Water crystallizes into sacred geometry. Metal softens under invisible pressure. Light itself begins to dance in patterns that mirror thought. It is said that these harmonics form a universal scale, a blueprint from which all existence vibrates. Each planet, each element, even the human soul, all part of a cosmic symphony guided by mathematical precision. To access it is to access creation itself, and that perhaps is why it was buried. Because a civilization that understands the forbidden harmonics no longer depends on external power, political, technological, or spiritual. It becomes sovereign, self-tuning, awake. What if the greatest secret ever kept was not hidden in a vault or a classified file, but in plain sound? A tone that could remind humanity who we truly are, vibrations of light dreaming ourselves into form. Maybe the ancients were not primitive. Maybe they were conductors. And maybe the song they left behind is still resonating, quietly, waiting for us to remember the frequency. Because once we hear it again, everything changes.
Every discovery we've explored tonight, from Tesla's towers to the lost solfeggio codes, points toward one undeniable truth. The universe is not silent. It sings. And so do we. Every cell, every heartbeat, every thought vibrates within that cosmic symphony. We are not observers of the universe. We are participants in its music. For generations, humanity has searched for truth in equations and dogmas, in microscopes and scriptures. But perhaps truth was never hidden. Perhaps it was simply drowned out by the noise of our own forgetting. The ancients didn't worship the stars. They listened to them. They understood that harmony was not just a concept, but a condition of being. To live in resonance was to live in alignment with the pulse of creation itself. And maybe that is the real forbidden knowledge. Not a machine or a device or a classified technology, but a realization that everything we touch, everything we think, everything we feel, vibrates back. Every emotion is a frequency. Every act of kindness, a wavelength. Every moment of fear or love, a signal that ripples through the unseen fabric of existence. We are transmitters of reality, and reality is the echo of our collective vibration. Perhaps the reason so much of this knowledge was erased is because a humanity that understands its own resonance cannot be controlled. A species that remembers its frequency becomes impossible to silence. So the question is not whether these lost sciences were real. The question is whether we are ready to hear their song again. Because somewhere in the background hum of the cosmos, that note is still playing, waiting for us to listen and to remember that we are not fragments of a broken world. We are chords in a living universe. And when we finally tune together, we won't just understand the resonant truth. We'll become it.